Hello everybody. We're live again tonight for our slotted pumpkin tutorial. I'm gonna give a minute for anybody who's planning to watch, for people to hop in while I share this in our groups and other social spots too. If you are planning to watch live, if you could just give me like a pumpkin emoji or say hi when you pop in. That way I know that you are here and that you're ready to paint. Again, this is the slotted wood pumpkins tutorial. Last night we did the chunky shapes, and then tonight we're gonna be doing these, which I'm really excited for these. We've done slotted shapes in the past before, the pineapples and the stars, but we haven't done pumpkins like this yet. And if you are watching this on YouTube or our website, this was recorded live on Facebook, so I'm gonna try not to use anybody's names while we're painting, but I will respond to questions, but just kind of know that if you're watching after the fact. Let's see, that might almost be a little bit better. No, we'll keep the light on. All right, so with this kit, this is a little bit different than the chunky shapes. You were able to pick your own colors for this. So I'm gonna be using 3 different colors on my pumpkins tonight. So if you're planning to order this kit in the future, I did put the link in the description of the video. We also have classes coming up for this too. So if you're planning on attending a class, this can kind of help with that. The colors that I'm gonna be using tonight are With a Twist, which is like a dark burnt orange, and Bliss, which is one of my favorites. It's like a darker, kind of more muted turquoise. And then I'm kind of torn between cheesecake and vanilla frosting. I think I'm probably gonna end up with the vanilla frosting. It's a little bit lighter, if you can see the difference between those two. This one is like more creamy, a little more tan in it, where this one's got more white in it. This one's a little bit lighter. So I think I'm gonna end up using that one. You should have some foam brushes. You're gonna want a different brush for each of your pumpkins. Again, if you're watching live, just say hi so I know you're here, or give me a pumpkin emoji in the comments. You should also have some sandpaper. You're gonna want a rag or some kind of paper towel, something to wipe the dust off after you sand. And then you should have a small jar of wax. So you don't necessarily have to wax, but it's gonna help protect your colors from fading over time. And then the wax is really helpful too if you're planning on putting them outside, which these ones aren't really meant for going outside, but you can. The wax is gonna help make these heat and water resistant. It's not gonna make them waterproof, so I would just not put them somewhere where they're gonna get like rained on or a lot of weather or a lot of moisture. We wanna keep them protected. So first thing, you wanna just kind of match up your pieces. So the way that these go together after they're all done being painted is they just kind of slide together like that. This is the biggest one. I believe that one's like 9-ish inches tall, medium. Together like that, and then the smallest one. So obviously whatever color you want to pop the most, you are going to want to use on your biggest pumpkin. Probably gonna keep my neutral color for the big one, since I have mostly neutrals in my house. I'll do my Bliss, my turquoise, for the medium, and then I don't have too much. I do decorate a little bit of orange with my fall stuff. I'm pretty much turquoise all year round. I try and bring that turquoise in as much as I can. So I'll do the small one with the twist. So to get started, make sure that you shake your paint up really, really good. Always want to shake it up good before using it. The water will separate on the top, which is good because it's going to protect the paint. But we need to mix that up so that that water kind of goes back in there. And then this first step is just easy, easy peasy. All you're gonna do with your brush, and if you have other brushes at home that you wanna use, like chip brushes or regular artist brushes, feel free. These foam brushes are just nice and easy. So you're just gonna do a light, thin coat. Now you can do it super, super light, and that's gonna make it look more like a stain. Or you can brush it on a little bit more solid so that that color dries a little more solid. And you're welcome to do more than one coat on these too. I probably won't, just because I want them to be kind of rustic, so I'll do like one thin coat. A lot of times people will ask, do we need to paint inside the slots here? You don't have to if you don't want to. I do. That way if there's anything visible after you put it together, it'll kind of blend in. But you're gonna do the whole thing. You're gonna do this side. You're gonna do the edge all the way around. And then I'm gonna let this sit for a minute and paint the other piece while this one's drying before I flip it over. So if you haven't ordered this project and you were kind of on the fence about this one, this is actually a great kids project too, just because it's so easy that the pieces slide right together. And it's really easy to paint. There's no stenciling. Unless you want to use one of the reusable patterns on it, you can. But it's just easy peasy, just painting that color on there. So there's piece one of that. And piece number two, just really make sure that you're using the right pieces. You don't want to accidentally paint one the wrong color, and then when you go to attach them, you're gonna have some problems. Now, you can choose if you want to paint your stems a different color. You don't have to. I am probably only gonna do that on the off-white one just because it's gonna be really light. But on these colorful ones, I'm just gonna leave them whatever color I'm painting them right now, and it's not gonna make too much of a difference. So again, paint the slot in here if you want to. Just wanna make sure that you're not putting too much paint on there. These are made out of plywood, so they actually soak in quite a bit. But if you've got drips going over the edges, those are gonna take a really, really long time to dry. So brushing that out as much as you can. And then you always wanna make sure that one side is dry to the touch before you flip it over to paint the other. So like I need this side to be dry to the touch, still a little bit wet. But probably by the time I finish this side, it'll be ready to go. That way when I flip this over and rest it down, it's not gonna be smearing the paint back off of it. And you can see right here, I got a little bit darker in that spot. That's okay. I can always go back over it if I wanna kind of blend that in. I am gonna sand these quite a bit to rough them up, so that'll kind of help blend that all in together. So we're just doing side number two. The nice thing about these, since they're three-dimensional, once you put them together, is that you're gonna see all the edges. So that's kind of why it's a little tricky to do pattern stencils with these, because if you're doing dots across this whole thing and dots across this whole piece, when you put them together, your dots aren't gonna line up perfectly. So we try to avoid patterns for these, but you're welcome to try it. All right, so there's that. Look at how easy that is and how fast that's going. Again, super, super easy project for all ages, adults and kids. So that's where you can see I went a little bit thick on the other side and the paint kind of rolled over onto this edge. Again, if you're joining us, give us a pumpkin emoji or say hi in the comments so I know that you're here. I'm watching the comments, so if anybody has a question, feel free to let me know. All right, so I'm gonna set these as far as I can off to this side. I definitely don't wanna be flicking any turquoise paint on those. You wanna kind of be careful with your work area too. You don't wanna get your color resting in something else, so that's a little bit wet. So I wanna be mindful of that when I'm putting these turquoise pumpkins down. So again, this is Bliss. If you're wondering about the colors, this first color I used was With a Twist. So if you have a burnt orange in your pack that looks like this, that one's gonna be With a Twist. Nice fall color. It looks a lot darker in the bottle than how it's drying. You can kind of see those two compared together. This looks really dark, but this doesn't look as dark once it's on there. And again, a little bit on your foam brush to start. This is probably gonna be enough to do almost this whole side. Now, if you ever use a color like this, like a bright color, and you feel like it's too vibrant, I'll show you a way at the end with your wax to kind of tone this down a little bit. All you're gonna need is some dark paint. So like a little bit of black or some dark gray or brown. I have the dark roast here that I'm gonna use. And I'm gonna show you how to wax this with a little bit of paint so it kind of brings this color down a little bit. All right. And again, the edge. Sometimes these rough edges can kind of shred up the foam brushes a little bit. That's okay if you're just using them for one-time use, but that might be a good spot where you want to kind of go in with an artist brush or maybe even a chip brush if you have one. I'm gonna do this edge. So if you were gonna paint your stems brown, you could always just avoid this part. I'll do that on the next one. That way you don't have to worry about covering up that color. Because if I left this turquoise and painted brown over it, you would see some of the turquoise showing through underneath after I stain it. Oh yeah, you might wanna wipe your fingers off in between colors too. I got a little orange on there. That's okay, it's character. All right, so we're gonna switch and do this one. So nice and solid. Again, if you want it to look more like stain, you're just gonna brush that out as much as you can. Getting those edges in there. I am excited to see the color combinations that people come up with as they're working. We've already had a couple people in our VIP group post their finished products with their color combos. And then we do have the classes coming up for these, so it'll be fun to see all the different colors that people pick. I like the non-traditional colors like this one too, so it's always fun when people incorporate that into their fall decor. All right, so there's that. So I just need to make sure that those are dry to the touch. Looking at this bottom one, I didn't get that edge. That's okay. When I go and do the next side, I'll be sure that I get that bottom edge. I'm just gonna wipe my hands off really quickly. Get all those colors off there, especially before I switch over and do the cream next. All right. So again, we want this one pretty much dry to the touch. So that's a good way to tell too, if you clean your hands and then you kind of run your hand over the piece, if there's any color that comes off, that's an indicator that there's still a couple wet spots. That's okay. That's dry enough for me to move on. Excuse me. So we're just covering everything that doesn't have paint on it yet. If you have already started decorating your house for fall, give me a thumbs up in the comments. I would be doing a thumbs up because I busted out some of my fall decor today. If you haven't started yet, you can give me something. Maybe not a thumbs down because that'll look bad, but a thumbs sideways maybe. But thumbs up if you already started decorating your house for fall. I am ready for fall this year. Okay. So this will be last coat on the Bliss. So you can see that I kind of got some through that slot and onto the other side. So just want to be mindful of that when I go to rest this down. And if it's helpful to kind of lean it up as you paint, you can do that too. All right, and then this little edge. So these will be visible. The edges will be visible once your shape is together. So you really want to make sure that you've got those pretty good. The slot won't be as visible, but the edges will. So once you get it together, you can always go back through if there's any spots that you feel like you need to fill in a little bit more. All right, and then last but not least is going to be the big pumpkin. I'm gonna kind of wipe off my area. I'm gonna wipe off my hands before this color since this is my lightest color. Yeah, we have a lot of leaves in our yard too. I swear he picks them up and then it's like 20 minutes later, a new blanket. Which I'm okay with, but our leaf picker-upper is probably not. And vanilla frosting. And a new foam brush. Now this color is going to be a little bit different just because it's so much lighter. So this would be one where if you really want this to be true to color, you would want to do 2 coats on this. So earlier I said that this is going to be one that I'm going to alter a little bit with some wax. I'm going to kind of make my own dark wax, my own antiquing wax. So if you don't love the color, if it doesn't feel like it's dark enough, just be sure to let it dry for about 5-10 minutes. And then you're gonna do a second coat. This one's gonna take the most paint since it's the biggest pumpkin. So again, this one you're gonna wanna kind of choose the color that you want to be most prominent in the set. Yeah, I normally don't decorate until after Labor Day, but I feel like it's so late this year. I was just ready for it, especially today. It was a rainy, dreary day. Good day for busting out the pumpkin stuff. Not a very summery day. Okay, so the way that this one looks for me right now, I probably will do a second coat on this one just so that color looks a little more solid. Usually I have a bigger work area, but since we're limited with the camera, things are a little tight. All right, so I'm just gonna do the edge up here. On this one, I won't do the whole stem. I'll end up painting that a different color. So just kind of like right up to it, but not over it. Edge. Completely covering. Okay. Let me get in here to do the slot. Looking good. I'm gonna set that one over here for right now. All right, and then we'll come back in and do side number 2 on this. Again, you want that first side to be completely dry. Brushing that out nice and even. Just kind of double check that you got all the edges. Got to get it in this little slot better. Okay. Side number 2 on piece number 2. So if you're gonna end up doing a second coat and you're painting your stem, do all of your first color first, like all of your base color. Then once you've got all that you want of that, you'll go in and paint your stem. That way you're not continuously trying to meet the 2 colors up together. When you do your stem, if it doesn't look perfect, like I got some on there, that stem color will cover up the other color and you won't run the risk of mixing the two together. All right. That one back over there to dry. So I am gonna do second coat on here, just real thin. That way it kind of covers up a little bit more of that wood grain just because it's so light. We want to kind of make this nice and solid. Back to the second piece. Okay. So you're just going to do that for all of your pieces. So all of that was step one. Base coats on everything, and then you're going to let it dry. So depending on how much paint you're doing, it could take about 10 minutes for everything to dry and be nice and true to color. This paint, the Country Chic paint, dries really quick, which is one thing that I love about it. You still want to give it time to fully cure, like especially if you're doing furniture. You want to make sure that that has like 24 hours-ish to cure. There we go. Ooh, I like almost poured the perfect amount of paint for this too. These are little 1 ounce cups, so I didn't even fill this up maybe about half of the way. So just a little bit of paint goes really far. All right, so now this piece is completely done. I've got 2 sides done on that. Just one side left to go on this one, and then all of my pumpkins have the base coat. So then the next step would be to do your stems. The sample photo that we had for these two, where it was the white pumpkins, they had the flecking, which is when you take a dark color, let me grab my leaf from our other video, a dark and a light color, and you kind of flick the paint on there. So I'm gonna do that on these pumpkins too, but we need everything to be sanded and dry before we do that. So next step, I'm gonna wipe my hands off again, just because I'm switching back colors. Kind of keep going in order with whatever color you started with. So I'll go back to my orange just because that one's going to be the most dry. So this little with a twist pumpkin here. So I'm not going to do the stem on that, only on my off-white one. So what I'm going to want to do next is just kind of make sure that my color is nice and even all the way across. This one, I'm going to brush a little bit more on just because I had some extra up at the top up there. That way, that kind of matches a little bit better. Same thing with this one. This one's got kind of like a little rough spot right here. So I'm just going to brush another very thin coat. I'm going to brush this out as much as I can. Checking my edges to make sure all my edges are covered. There we go. What the heck? We'll do another coat on this side. So we're just kind of making sure everything looks good with our color. Second coats as needed. I think my Bliss is looking pretty great. I don't think that one's gonna need a second coat anywhere. Did get a little bit of the vanilla frosting on there. That's okay. Excuse me, because I'm going to end up sanding these to kind of rough them up a little bit. So that's going to be the next step on these. There's 2 different kinds of sandpaper you can use. More often than not, you're going to want to use a fine grit. It's like a 220. Should feel nice and smooth across the top. This is going to be great for just kind of evening out your color and doing very minor distressing around the edges. It'll make any rough edges on your shape nice and smooth. So if you have any little jagged spots on there, Kind of smooth those out. It'll dull your color just slightly, but that's okay. When we put the wax on in the next step, that's gonna help even all of that back out. So just nice and light. So again, this is fine grit sandpaper. Okay, and then the alternative to that would be if you have coarse grit, which is really, really rough. This is gonna take off a lot of paint and let a lot of the color underneath show through. So I'm gonna use that on this with a twist. So this is really gonna kind of dull your color down, but it'll brighten it back up afterwards. This is also gonna take a lot of paint off the edges. So if you can see on there how much paint or how much wood is starting to show through, how much paint is coming off. I do like that for some of these richer colors where it just feels like maybe it's a little too much. The coarse grit takes a lot off pretty quick. So you don't have to use coarse grit if you have it laying around and you want to try it. Just kind of remember that once that paint comes off, that's kind of it. If it seems like it's too much, you would just have to paint some more of it back on there. All right. So we're gonna wipe the dust off these, and I'm gonna set these off to the side for right now. Just try and get as much dust off there as you can. I'm gonna do that same thing on this one. That way they kind of blend together once they're assembled. Side number 2 and the edge. So just remember that everything has to be dry to the touch before you do any sanding. Okay. There we go. This paint gets pretty dusty too, so it's a good idea. Have some way to kind of gather that dust up. You can use your rag and then just be sure to get a new one before moving on. Okay, so now that we've got those sanded, we're gonna be ready to do the stem on this guy. So there are a few colors that would work great for this. The dark roast is really, really dark. It's like an espresso brown. So that's how dark that one is. That's what I'm gonna end up using to fleck on this one. That's the one that I used on the leaf that I showed earlier. Or if you want more of like a medium tone brown, you can use a color like the Canapé, which is a little bit lighter. That is if you just don't want something that's so dark. So kind of some options. Depending on some of the colors that you guys picked when you ordered them, we might have given you one or the two. Canapé is a great color though because it pretty much goes with everything. Dark roast I really like because you're gonna get a bigger contrast with those lighter colors. So I'm gonna use that on this one. And for the stem, I'm just covering just this area. I'm gonna kind of round out around the top right there. And we're gonna do that all the way around. Doesn't have to be perfect, don't overthink it. Just using a small detail brush. Kind of paint that on there, covering that whole thing. Nice thing is you only have to do it on one of the pieces, since only one piece has the stem. Okay. You do want to be careful though about laying this down to dry. So I'm going to kind of rest this on an unused cup over here. That way I don't have to touch that stem down. And then I'm going to use just fine grit paper on these because they're already so light. I don't want to take off too much of this color. So just really light. We're just smoothing it out. again, be sure to wipe the dust off. Every time you do sanding, you want to wipe all that dust off there so it doesn't catch in our wax later on. Okay. This piece, real close to having that dark roast being dry. I don't want to do too much sanding while that's still wet, just because I don't want the dust to get in there. So I'm going to kind of start down here on each side. And sand away from it. There we go. Now we're just gonna wipe that off. Okay, so since this shape is already a light color, for the flecking, I'm only gonna do a dark color over it. It really doesn't need any of the light flecking like how we had on the leaf. So that's kind of what we're talking about with this, with the dark and the white little like splotches that you can see on there. It just kind of gives it more of a vintage look. It's like speckled. So I don't need the white on this one since I have the vanilla frosting on there already. I can just use the dark brush or the dark roast with a brush. Again, a detail brush works great for this. If you have like an old toothbrush or like an old crusty brush like this, that works great for these. Anything that's kind of stiff, you just want like a little bit of paint on there to start. This is a messy step, so just kind of make sure whatever's around, if you got your phone propped up or your cup, we don't want to get any paint on those, so kind of move things out of the way. What you're gonna do is put a little bit of paint on that brush to start, and then you're just gonna take your finger on the bristles and you're just gonna flick it. See how messy that is? Doesn't take very much paint at all, just a little bit. You're probably gonna have to keep going back in your cup for a little more. So you can do as little or as much of this as you would like. You just wanna kind of hold it a few inches above. Yeah, if you've got like an old piece of cardboard or a pizza box or something that you can kind of prop up behind, a little backsplash action. That works great. So the more paint that you have on the brush, the more likely you are to get really big speckles, like these ones right here. So if you want just little teeny tiny ones, you just want a little bit of paint on the brush. You don't want too much on there at all. Your finger is gonna get pretty messy too. So have something on hand to wipe those. Now with these, we can't wax this until all of those speckles are dry. And depending on how thick your speckles are, they might take a little bit longer. So like on the leaf, these white ones right here took a good amount of time. You can see this one was actually wet when I went over it with the wax, so it kind of smeared a little bit. That's okay, just adds character. But we wanna make sure that all of those are totally dry before we do anything with that. So again, that speckling or that flecking is optional. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I'm gonna do it on all the pieces of this one, just so that when it's together, it looks the same. I'm not gonna do a ton. Oh yeah, there's some big speckles on that one. Okay, so then you just have to wait until that side's dry to be able to flip it over and do the other side. So we're gonna let Big Pumpkin dry for a couple minutes, and we'll switch back to our little pumpkins. Our With a Twist pumpkin and our Bliss pumpkin. So these ones have been sanded and roughed up. So these are ready to wax. These are in the final stages. So you can use either a clean rag, an old sock works great. If you have like a mismatched sock, that works great for waxing too. Just as long as it's not like a really woolly one that's gonna put a lot of lint on there. So all you're gonna do with your wax and your rag or cloth is you're gonna put a little chunk on there to start, and you're just gonna start buffing that wax in. So you can see how much that brightens that color right up. Now, if you're feeling like this is too bright or too dark, I know I kind of mentioned that earlier, what you can do, if you want to kind of take that color down a little bit, with a little bit of your wax, you're gonna put a very, very small amount of a dark color paint in there. So this is the dark roast. I'm just gonna kind of work that in with my wax. So you're like making your own antiquing wax. So you'll see the difference. I'll do this side over here with it. Little bit darker. I didn't put too much paint in there. I can do a little bit more. Or you can just kind of dip it straight in. So you can see the difference that makes now too. So if you need to tone that color down a bit, make it a little more muted. Add a dark color in. The nice thing about this is if you add that dark color and you feel like, whoa, that's too dark, not really feeling that, you can take a clean part of your rag, no paint on it, clean wax, no paint mixed in, and just kind of work that right back off. It'll remove a lot of that dark color. It's not going to take it out completely. You can still see some of the brown in there, but it will kind of help spread it out a bit. So if you feel like, whoa, that's way too dark, little bit of clean wax, and that'll kind of help maneuver it around. So just a little bit darker, little bits of brown here and there. That's something that you can do on signs too, if you're painting signs at home. And maybe you feel like the stark white just isn't cutting it, you can make your own antiquing wax like that. Or we have a lot of waxes that have colors already mixed in. We actually have ones that have black and gray, and gold is a fun one to use. There's a limestone wax that has some white mixed into it. There is a white wax too, all kinds of different things. So that really picked up that spot right there with the tone of the wood. I'm gonna work that in a little bit more. Make sure that you wax the edges. You don't have to wax the slot if you don't want to, since when they go together, that spot's gonna be covered. So we'll do the same thing over here, little tiny bit. I'll work that in. Your goal with the wax is that your shapes feel smooth, not sticky or greasy. Don't want your shapes to feel sticky or greasy. Okay, so just watch for your dust on the table too. Woo, got a lot on there. There we go. Yeah. So see, I let that brown sit on there a little bit too long, a little streaky. That's not gonna bother me, but that would be a spot where maybe you would wanna work that out a little bit more. Or you could cover that with some new paint. If you ever wax something and you wanna fix it, all you have to do is kind of strip that wax back off of there. Rubbing alcohol is great for that. I'm gonna do the edge. And then this one will slide together. Voila, ready to go. Get some of that brown on that edge. All right, so that one's done. So we're gonna set him off to the side. So now this orange one, we're just gonna do straight up wax. No paint, nothing, just wax. So this orange will get a lot brighter than what it was before. Edge, slot, just kind of run your hand over it. Make sure it doesn't feel greasy. That wax dries pretty quick. It soaks in pretty quick. Again, the wax is gonna help protect the colors from fading. They'll be heat and water resistant, but they won't be waterproof. So just keep that in mind if you're gonna put these outside. They are not going to be waterproof. Piece number 2. You also want to make sure that you don't have like large chunks of wax sitting in the slots in here too. because when you put these together, that might push them out. Any chunks of wax are not gonna soak into the paint and dry. So we want everything to be nice and smooth before we put it together. This side's a little greasy, so we're just gonna rub a little bit more off. And this little pumpkin, he's ready to go. So we're gonna pop them together. Boom. 2 out of 3, done. Set him out to the side. Okay. So we did the flecking on side number 1. I won't do it on the other side on the video. You can just pretend that it's on there. For time purposes, I'm just gonna go ahead and wax this side. Same thing. Again, if you want a little bit darker of a color, work a little bit of paint in there. Tiny, tiny little bit. Needs a little more wax. So I'm just gonna make this a little warmer. I think I need more wax in there. There we go. So this is really gonna give it that kind of like primitive look. With the flecking, you just wanna make sure that that's totally dry. All right. Edge, slot. So I don't know if it's easy to see the difference in color between those two. This one looks very bright and this one's a little more toned down. This one has a little bit of the brown mixed in with the wax. So we'll do the same thing on this one. So it's just a little bit warmer. Going over a neutral color like this. It's not gonna do anything over the dark stem just because that part's already dark. I'm just gonna add a little bit of something over this vanilla frosting. A little bit of warmth. So I'm not gonna wax the other side yet just because I haven't flecked it. I wanna make sure that they match on both sides, but I'll put these two together just so you can kind of see. So you see how you're seeing part of one side and part of the other? That's where we talk about with the stencils like these. It can be kind of tricky because you're trying to get two different sides to match up. So then that's the side that hasn't been flecked yet. So you can kind of see the difference between those two. This is just solid color, whereas this one has some of the flecking on it. And then these have neither. So there's what it's gonna look like finished once both sides have that. So, and then once you have your wax on there, that is it. These little slotted pumpkins are done, ready to go on a mantle, ready to go on a shelf. Again, super easy project, great for kids or adults, either or. We have classes coming up for this. If you didn't get to order a project, we have, I believe, 7 sets of these ready to go. If you want to check out our site, you get to pick 3 colors of your choice. So we have fun colors like the fresh mustard. I really love yellow, especially with like navy tones for the fall. Sparklers, this is like a reddish orange color that's really pretty. We did get some new oranges for fall projects. This pumpkin spice is really great. That's what it looks like compared with a twist. You can really do anything. You can do gray. I had some people order pinks and purples and all kinds of fun colors. So whatever you decorate with for fall, you'll be able to use on these. So I'm gonna link the colors in the comments of this video. If you think you would like to check those out, there's over 50 different colors that you can choose from Country Chic, and you can get all kinds of creative. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment on this video. We're gonna download this and upload it to our YouTube and link it on the website. So if you didn't get a chance to watch this live, you can always watch it here on Facebook, or you can visit the website later on. So thanks so much for watching our tutorial, and I hope you guys have a great night.